a lot of people have this generic goal. I want a six-pack. I want to lose weight. They don't necessarily explore why they want that goal. What I try to do with people is try to drive self-awareness to who they are so they can understand the why behind what they're doing.
Welcome to Stronger You Radio with Mike Dola. Join Mike and friends as they discuss issues to keep you healthy, fit, and on track to create a stronger you. Let's listen in now.
Hey guys, it's Mike Dola back with another episode of the Stronger You Radio podcast. Today we have a special guest, Johnny Pietrunti. He is a sports psychologist, expert in goal setting, and someone that I've been wanting to talk to for a very long time because I think he can help you guys out a lot. Johnny, can you give us a little bio and your background real quick?
Oh God! Do you want me to truncate this? I have for the guys who don't know me, a lot of you guys follow me. I have what I would classify as an eclectic background. I think first and foremost, my background is in leadership. I was in the military a very long time. I got out as a chief petty officer. Then I went into the training sector because I had done a little bit of that within the military as kind of a collateral duty. So basically, if somebody failed their fitness test, I was the guy who helped get them back on track, which means I was working with a lot of people who weren't necessarily motivated to exercise or they wouldn't have failed in the first place. So I left the military. I did the personal training thing for a while. I got a degree in performance psychology. Then I decided I wanted to go into manual therapy, so I went and got a massage license. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades, I guess. But first and foremost, I'm a coach, and first and foremost, I help coaches coach, if that makes sense. So, I'm with the soft skills, I'm with the people skills. I'm about trying to figure out what obstacles are in somebody's way and try to help them to either go around them or eliminate them.
Perfect. Yeah, this is definitely something we need help with. Coaches, clients, everyone with goals in general. We know what we have to do. We just don't know how to do it. So what can we say to someone that, they know what to do, but they're just not doing it? Is there a step-by-step process you have or anything you can say on that?
I think the most important thing is, from a coaching standpoint, is getting to know the client. And from the client standpoint, it's self-awareness of who they are as a person. And, you and I have talked about this before. I think a lot of people, have this generic goal. I want a six-pack or I want to, lose weight. They don't necessarily explore why they want that goal. I use myself as an example. I was always chubby as a youngster and I wanted a six-pack. Well, I didn't really want a six-pack. I wanted self-acceptance. I wanted to feel good about myself. I wanted people to think I was attractive. So, maybe I saw the six-pack as, a means to that end. But what happens is when you get there, you realize it's not, that six-pack that makes you happy. It's learning to see yourself in a new light. So what I try to do with people is try to drive self-awareness to who they are so they can understand the why behind, what they're doing. Okay, so you signed up for Stronger You want to lose this weight, you're on this 12-week session. Well, why did you do that? What is the real reason? Because that's going to determine, the drivers and the motivators.
Right, and it's so interesting because even I didn't think of stuff like that up until a year or two ago. I was like, oh, well, people want to be strong. Okay, but why do you want to be strong? Well, I want to win this competition. Okay, what does winning that competition do? Makes me feel good about myself. And then you go down this 20-step process and you finally realize the real reason you're doing things.
Yeah, and it's sometimes how, life works in general. And I think that's one of the key things is to let people know, and you guys do a great job of this, that this is more of a lifestyle change, that it's not a quick fix. Because, self-discovery and self-awareness and trying to figure out what drives us and what motivates us towards chasing our goals is a living process. It's not like a quick fix where I give you some magic macros and then boom, you're a completely different person and you're done 12 weeks later. It just doesn't work like that. And neither does goal setting.
Yeah, and that's something I say a lot. We have a lot of people that are like, well, my coach didn't motivate me. I can't do what I'm supposed to do. And I say, well, try to look at this program as something that's going to help you help yourself, not make you do something you don't want to do. But in cases like that where someone just keeps self-sabotaging, what are your steps into getting them to realize what they're doing and fix it?
Well, you brought up an interesting point there in terms of people saying, my coach didn't motivate me. I think the first thing to realize, and I talk a lot about this, and you were at the seminar where I talked about this, the coach's job isn't to motivate you. The coach creates an environment that facilitates you being intrinsically motivated. And that's an important distinction, because if you're having to rely on a coach to prod you in a direction consistently, then that speaks to where you're at in terms of your reasons behind doing something. And I went into this a little bit on a Facebook Live the other day, looking at it from a framework of self-determination theory. Extrinsic motivation isn't necessarily a bad thing. You just have to go along the continuum to internalize it more so that you're doing it for your own reasons. I don't know if that makes sense. What I'm saying is you might need that coach to kind of prod you and put a foot in your behind towards the initial start of a program. But eventually you and the coach need to be working to find things that bolster that motivation and get it so you're doing it on your own and it becomes a habit.
Right.
So, it's one thing if you have a client out the gate saying, my coach didn't motivate me. But, if we're talking 6 weeks later, at that point, you and the coach need to be having a conversation, and you might need to look inside yourself and say, okay, what are the reasons behind why I'm doing this? What is my process? And, is this something I actually want to do? Or do we need to just revamp the process and, get me rolling?
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing. And a lot of times where in coaching, you have to balance customer service and being a coach. And sometimes, and I say this a lot, I think the best thing a coach can do is be honest with someone. Use your words wisely, obviously, but it might be a good thing sometimes to say, it might be you and your dedication. Let's figure out why you're not doing it and how to make you do it.
But yeah, I think you made a good point, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for you to sit down and tactfully tell someone, hey, listen, here's where you are right now, and you don't have the the energy or the time or whatever it is for some reason to pursue this goal, with the zeal you need, so maybe we need to back off or at least modify something. I think what we see a lot of in this industry is people try to just pound through that brick wall instead of maybe climbing over it or going around it. They just try to ram the client through the brick wall. And that only works for so long before someone just gets burned out because they don't have their own driver behind it.
And that's the cool thing about this style of eating is there's no all or nothing. Like this isn't like a paleo diet or Atkins or keto or Whole30 where it's like you do this and if you don't, you're not following the diet. Our method is like be close to these amounts most of the time. Don't get crazy out there. Stay active, sleep well, drink water. And you're going to be okay. There's not too much to really worry about, but we need some sort of commitment to see the change.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I think that your program is so successful is because when you look at just the autonomy that you give your clients, you're not handing people like restrictive food lists and saying, you can't do this, can't do this. You're basically putting people in the driver's seat. You're saying, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's your process. You can find a way that works for your lifestyle to get you to that process. We're just going to guide you. We're not going to get in the way of that.
Right.
So that really just in terms of giving people autonomy, whether it's through your program or if there's other coaches or people who are self-coaching listening, putting yourself or putting the people you coach in the driver's seat and putting them in control of their own destiny is just huge in terms of bolstering intrinsic motivation. So, if you're having problems either with yourself or with people you're working with, getting them to move forward on their own, take a look at if you're babying them too much as opposed to giving them choices and giving them a say in how they're going about the program.
And that's always tough, like how you handle different personalities, because there's hundreds of different types of people. And some people react really well to tough love. Some people need a little, a hug over the internet. So that's tough sometimes. And is there anything that you see in people that can kind of give clues as to what people respond to better? Because I don't think when people say this is what I need, sometimes it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. I think a lot of it is situational. And, I don't necessarily have an easy answer for that. you have HR experience, so you just have experience dealing with a bunch of people. And I have experience in leadership dealing with divisions of like 200 plus people. So I think just time in the tank sometimes allows you to read people a little better in terms of what they're doing. I think one thing that could help people, though, is understanding where the client is in terms of their knowledge base. Because some people who might have low motivation and low knowledge are going to need like guidance and cheerleading. Right. Whereas, if I were on your program, I'm there for the accountability. So if you cheerlead someone like me, I'll just roll my eyes. Yeah. So it's kind of knowing. And honestly, that's on a continuum because that might change. The client might have some kind of life experience or something going on or a job change or a divorce. And then the whole motivation structure changes and you have to be on your toes as a coach. Which is also helpful if, because you and I share the same philosophy with having clients, in the pocket, so to speak. That's why I let people reach me at any time. Is, things change and it's like, okay, I'm on plan. Oh, now my dog died. It's like, okay, I got you. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to shift this and boom, you keep moving forward.
Right. Like today, someone texted me because they're sick and they're not going to be working out for 3 days. I said, all right, let's just adjust this and that. You'll be okay. Sleep well, drink water. Everything's cool. But yeah, man, it's tough sometimes because I just want to save the world. And when someone comes, I kind of expect them to have at least some level of motivation. But how, and this is just for my own knowledge and our coaches, what is something we can do for someone that just keeps blaming other things and can't accept that it might be their doing?
I mean, at that point, you have to kind of hold a mirror to some people because some people won't. And I think, there might be an underlying, you need to see a therapist type thing there. And that's why I'm adamant about the fact that I'm like a sports psychology consultant, but I'm not a clinical psychologist. So some people need to be referred out. But I think some people, I've been doing this long enough where some people will hire a coach on, whether it's for nutrition or fitness, just to have an excuse when they don't do their own thing. So it's like, okay, well, I paid you, so nothing worked out, so it's your fault as opposed to the fact that I wasn't doing anything. And that's one of the reasons why I like to document and log stuff.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, this isn't working. This is your fault. I'm like, okay, here, these are your macro numbers. I noticed you haven't logged anything in MyFitnessPal for 2 weeks. So, have you been sticking to those numbers? Because I have no metric now. So then it becomes harder for them to deny that when it's in their face. It's like, well, you're telling me you ate like this. I have no evidence that you ate like this. So at the very least, you can't blame it on me if I have no data to go off.
Yeah. And that's we don't want to say oh, it's your fault. It's our fault. It's a team effort. And what we're trying to do is just trying to figure out how to get people to do the most basic thing to lose the weight or perform better or whatever their goal is.
And in that case, a lot of it is just listening. I firmly believe that if you listen well enough, you're going to get to everyone's driver. Yep. They're telling you in some way, shape, or form why they're here and why they're messing things up. It just requires that soft skill of listening and kind of sifting and digging through stuff. And some of that just it requires trust. And I think a lot of it, going back to self-determination theory, another big thing I harp on is as you're guiding somebody through something, don't make them feel dumb because that's just going to affect the competency.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of people honestly don't even realize what they're doing to sabotage themselves, at least out the gate. Once people have been tracking for a certain amount of time, if they look at it, they can be like, oh yeah. But I think a lot of people, I would run into people back when, the big thing was, eat healthy fats. People would just be bombing down almonds. And it's like, hey, listen, I understand these are healthy fats, but you kind of got to weigh these out because you just took in 800 calories and you didn't even realize it. So some people don't realize little things like that. But I think, like I said, it's digging and sifting and getting to know the client. Because, I honestly don't think anybody comes to us as fitness professionals wanting to fail.
Yeah.
I really think people want to succeed. They want to reach their goals. We just might have to hone the goal or hone their mindset around that.
Now, do you think there's a big difference between wanting to hit a goal and caring enough to hit the goal?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Because I've said it before, and I was a little nervous because you know how tone could be lost on the internet.
Yes.
So I forget exactly how I said it, but basically I was like, if you care enough, you will make it happen. it's not about wanting to lose the weight or wanting to perform better or wanting to win a powerlifting meet or whatever. It's if you really care, you're going to make it happen. But I don't know how to. It's almost offensive because it's like it's telling someone you don't really care. You're just telling me you care.
You bring up a good point in that speaks to what I tend to stomp around on the internet, although I've cooled off lately, in terms of congruency. Mm-hmm. So what you're basically saying there, and it's 100% true, if the goal somebody has is in complete alignment with who they are as a person and what their values are, then they're going to care enough to follow through. So, with the New Year's just having rolled around, an example I would give is that a lot of people will set a New Year's resolution just for the sake of setting it, or because people in the office are doing it. In that case, it's not necessarily their goal. So in that case, yes, it could be easy for somebody to have this goal and maybe, to impress their peers or whatever, they want to drop the weight, but they don't really care enough, like you said, because there's no ownership. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's another reason why, in terms of setting the goals, it's like make sure the goals are your goals, not somebody else's goal, not Sally's goal in the corner cubicle, not yada, yada, yada. Make sure it's legitimately in alignment with what you want to achieve as a person.
Right. And I think the goal thing is interesting because it's a lot of people's goal is, and I forget the terminology, but you and I talk a lot about the process goal. Like if you can just make your goal like doing what you have to do instead of the long-term thing, you're going to do great. Like think of it as like a 401k. Your goal is to retire comfortably, but your immediate goal, the process is you have to put money in every paycheck. If you do that, you cannot fail at your ultimate goal.
One of the funny things about that is I think it's just like a Western or an American thing. We tend to see these big grand visions, then not think about how to break it down. And one of the things that makes me just bang my head off a wall in this industry is when we look at fitness and when we look at nutrition and dieting, it's one of the easiest subjects where you can break the goal down into a process. Mm-hmm. I mean, just by nature of giving someone macros and daily targets, you've given them a process goal for the day, and you can break that down by meal. So if someone's tracking, they can just meal by meal, click off a check mark and just gain momentum. You're tracking. So it's not abstract because I do work with people who are like, in leadership positions, executives. That's a little more abstract, trying to break down their goals for leadership into a process. But in fitness, I mean, you did the reps for the exercise that you didn't, you did the workout or you didn't. It's almost brainless for us to break this down for our clients, and some people just miss the mark on that. Mm-hmm. And, even if the goal isn't necessarily honed, by having that process and establishing that momentum, you can establish some habits without really zeroing in on the goal out of the gate. It gives you almost a little bit of time.
It's funny and I posted this a while back, like there is no better return on investment other than sticking to like a fitness or nutrition program. If you do it, there is 100% chance you're going to get better. But if you're in school and your goal is to get a good job after college, like you're going to do all the processes, but you still may not get that job. But nutrition is a completely different game. It's so guaranteed.
And I've often joked that maybe people sabotage themselves because it is so guaranteed. Yeah. Or they come up with just BS excuses. Like, listen, if you're in a caloric deficit and you're hitting your numbers, you're going to lose weight. You don't have to invent a reason why you didn't lose weight. Like it's math. It's there. Right. So I think some of the reasons we run into that are because it's almost like, could this possibly be this easy? And I mean, let's face it, like there's people in this industry and the pop diet books, and they try to complicate this. I don't think it's really that complicated. On the exercise side, Jeb and I from Brooklyn Strong, we talk about this all the time. Even exercise really isn't all that complicated. Get in there a few days a week and move.
Yeah, and you know why it's all these books pop up, because it's extremely hard to sell like a caloric deficit. It's not sexy. People don't want to feel like they're dieting, but the truth is you have to be in a deficit to lose weight. And there's still people out there arguing that you don't, and I don't even know what to say to those people. It's kind of like the flat earth thing, and I hope I didn't offend anyone by talking about the flat earth. But yeah, man, it's you said something on the podcast we did with you guys, the Brooklyn Strong podcast. I love it and I want to steal it and pretend I made it up, but I'm not going to do that. You said science doesn't have a party and forget to invite you. Everyone is invited to the science party. You just have to do what you got to do and you're going to show up.
And I mean, the same thing works with it works with goals. It works with all of the psychological stuff we see. It's just, breaking through that initial barrier. And like I said, a lot of that goes back to kind of figuring out why your client's doing what they're doing.
Right.
Or why you're doing what you're doing. And there's a lot of stuff like I joke that I'm my own worst damn client because I'm just a disaster with so many things. And it's like I do what I do because with my knowledge, I can justify any type of crap.
Oh, yeah. But that's why I have coaches ourselves.
I will make the worst exercise routine on my own for myself.
Yeah, you're like, well, I don't want to squat today.
I'm not doing anything.
Right, you're like, I'm going to do lunges. It's the same. And then you're like, well, it's kind of, but not really. I totally get it.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing with my eating. That's why I was only half joking when I said I'm going to hire one of your guys.
Dude, do it. We're here. But yeah, now, when someone has a goal and they're super motivated and then things start slowing down, what do you say to people that need that extra kick in the butt?
I mean, in some cases, it's warranted to give it to them. I think what I like to do is first, shift the focus away from that outcome. Okay, so if somebody wants to lose 20 pounds, yeah, sure, keep that outcome goal. But I'll start shifting the focus on the process and the mastery and more understanding the little daily wins. And that's another reason I think tracking is so important because, fat loss isn't necessarily linear. You're going to have hiccups. But if you can look back through records or a journal or even MyFitnessPal and physically show the client evidence, like, here, look at, you did everything right, everything's going. Right. This is just one of those hard spots. That makes it easier for them to step back objectively and be like, oh, okay.
Right, because we make people weigh in every day because we love data. The more data we have, the better, more informed decision we can make. But it can make people crazy and they say, well, Mike, my scale didn't move today. What did I do wrong? And it's like, it doesn't work like that. The scale is just a tool that's going to show you what's going on. It doesn't define you. Focus on your performance. How do you feel when you wake up? What are your non-scale victories? Like, did you fit into a dress that you couldn't fit in a year ago? Like, that's awesome. Why are you not celebrating that?
And that's a perfect way to do it with just providing them with the education because a lot of people just don't understand that because I still get that when I'm working with people. They'll be like, well, I only lost a half a pound this week. And I'm like, well, first of all, it's good. First of all, but I mean, in the initial stages of a diet, especially if you're eating crap, you're going to drop a bunch of water weight.
Right.
So, everything's going to slow and taper off. And as you start to get really lean, it becomes kind of like, for me, like if I'm with Vanessa doing contest prep, that becomes like creative, oh my God. But just educating a client and just understanding like, hey, listen, here's how this works. And like you said, it doesn't define you. Let's look at your other victories. How are you feeling? Okay. So for whatever reason, whether it's, that time of the month or you ate some extra carbohydrates last night, the scale looked this way. That's not who you are. It's just information.
Right. Is there something, because this is like a big, they've done studies on it and self-reporting errors. Like, is there something internally going on where people do things like they sabotage themselves without even realizing it or just kind of fudging the numbers? Does that make sense?
I think some of it has to do with legitimate measurement errors. The example I use is peanut butter. So if you look at the grams of peanut butter and then you measure out a tablespoon of peanut butter, it almost never matches.
It's sad.
Some of that, like if you're dealing with a smaller female, for example, that could throw everything off. From a psychological perspective, sometimes you don't want to admit to that, incongruency. You don't want to admit that you screwed up something.
Right.
I'm not going to mention who, but a certain bodybuilder I live with has screwed up on her contest diet and just made adjustments to fix it without telling her coach.
I know that happens.
So it's just one of those things where sometimes you just want to own up to it. And in that case, that's another, it's really important to have that healthy coach-athlete relationship where someone's comfortable enough or you're comfortable enough to tell your coach, like, hey, man, look, I screwed up. Because, I've been there as a coach where it's frustrating where I'm looking at the number and it's like, okay, dude, like, please tell me you messed up somewhere at this point. And they're like, yeah, dude, I had a couple slices of pizza last night. Okay, you know?
Just communicate. That's all we want. We want people to be very open with it.
People don't want to admit when they screw up, and that's like human. That's normal. Especially like when you're with a coach, you're afraid the coach is going to yell at you, or you're going to let the coach down.
Yeah.
It's another extrinsic motivator, like, oh, I don't want to let Mike down and let him know that I ate a whole Ben & Jerry's Vermonster last night.
Yeah. But sometimes it's like, wait a minute, like they're nailing everything. What's happening? And that's the tricky part as a coach, to politely say, hey, are you sure these numbers are good? Like, is there anything you could be missing? Because this whole system is kind of foolproof. So if you give us good data, like, good results will come. So what might be happening?
Yeah, I'm usually like after like 10 days where the result isn't matching the data, I'm having that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to have early, and I'm going to share some secrets of my coaching real quick. But what I do is I always put myself in their shoes, because I was there. I used to miss things. I would not report things, and there would be times where I would be like, well, I don't have to put that on the sheet. And then I'm like, wait, no, like, coach doesn't know that's happening. We have to just be honest, because it's in the best interest of everyone.
Most coaches who are worth their salt, like, we beat ourselves up if something isn't right, and we assume it's our fault. So, like, please tell us. It only helps the process along, because there could be a trigger there. Like, if you ate something on a particular night, we can look at that behavior and be like, okay, well, what made this happen? And that only gives us more tools to help that from, prevent that from happening again.
Right. And that's what we're going to add something in our app when it comes out, a temptation tracker. We want to know what kind of temptations people have, how many per week, what times they're happening. This way we can try to put our members in a position to succeed. Like, are you tempted at 9 o'clock when you get into work? Maybe you don't walk into the office break room where all the donuts and bagels are. Maybe you scoot right on by. So those are things we can that are just going to make us better coaches and train people to have better habits overall.
Dude, I love that. Like, I need to see this app when it comes out.
Dude,
I do that in an analog way.
Yeah.
I have one particular client who is spot on at home, but at work, just with the nature of her job and finding another job, and she doesn't like this job, there happens to be like a Starbucks that she can see from her office window. So like that, and knowing that, it's like, okay, well, what are the contingency plans? You know that's a temptation. You know, when Tom, Dick, or Harry comes around and pisses you off, you're going to want to go down there. So let's come up with a plan to prevent that from happening.
That's always the fun part, is trying to figure out, like, I'm big on the strategies of eating. The science, yeah, absolutely, we follow the science. But there's very little rules to nutrition, but there's like a million strategies. And if we can give people those, like, I seriously think about writing a little stupid bathroom book about reasons why people are overweight and just having them tweak those little things.
And sometimes that's all it needs, and I think that's one of the reasons why data is so beneficial, is we can take a look at that and even from like a psychological point of view, figure out what's going on. And sometimes just a little tweak is all that you need.
I think for most people, if they stopped eating out and stopped drinking so much, they would just drop weight drastically.
True story. When I was like getting super fat in my early military days, that's what I did, was just confine drinking to a few drinks one night a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that just set the roller coaster, like the snowball just rolling down the hill. Just getting rid of beer that as much as I was drinking it.
It's crazy. And then when you drink, you just are influenced to do so many other wrong things around dieting.
And that's another example where, having self-awareness to understand, what triggers you and how alcohol affects you and all that stuff. Because, some people might have to just basically abstain from it, not because of the alcohol itself, but because they just want to raid the fridge every time.
Right. Now, what do you think of like motivational memes and things like that? Like people that always need to go to Instagram and search for the motivation of the day.
I've been quiet about this. Inspirational is not motivational. Motivation is just a reason behind why you do something. It's a driver that gets you to move in a particular direction towards a particular goal. That meme might be inspiring. You might see that on a crappy rainy day and be like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym. This meme psyched me up, but that's not going to be sustainable. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but I mean, it's just like coaches calling themselves motivators. Like, no, like you're just creating that environment so your people can thrive. You're not motivating. You're not doing the work. They're doing the work. So, I think it's cool to look at them. They make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, but you really need to internalize the goal, and you need to internalize what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's important to you if you want to sustain that.
Right. I always think of the motivational meme as like, it might get you in the door, but it's not going to keep you in the door. So if it leads you to some good decisions and those become habits, then it's awesome. But for the most part, I find that the people that share them most and like them most are the ones that just kind of need to stay away from them.
Yeah, and like I said, it's like a quick shot of whatever. It's like a Band-Aid. Like it makes you feel initially good. It's a temporary replacement for not having a well thought out, well planned, internalized goal. Is what it is.
Yeah,
you hit the nail on the head. Like, go ahead and look at them, but unless you have a steady stream of like a million memes you can look at all day long, it's not going to keep you in the gym. And even if you did, that's still like an external regulation. That is like way, way down the hierarchy of extrinsic motivation. It's not going to keep you to the point where you internalize it, where the exercise and the diet becomes a part of you, to where eventually you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. That meme isn't going to get you there.
Right. So we're going to wrap up now, Johnny. Is there anything you can say to the listeners about, just really quick, like, I want to hit a goal, but I don't know how to create the goal?
Okay, find out what it is you want to do. Like, it was New Year's, everyone threw out a goal. I want to do blah, blah, blah. Find out what it is and really sit down and ask yourself why you want to do this and put it into the context of who you are as a person. I know for those of you who are into, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, they do the whole write your own eulogy. Figure out who you are as a person and how that goal relates to you. And if that matches who you are and is something you legitimately want to do and it's realistic enough for you to achieve, break it down into milestones and then break it down into a process and count your wins every day as you work towards those milestones and eventually towards the long-term goal, while at the same time not being afraid to modify or change things if you need to.
Perfect. I love it, man. And I say this sometimes, that sometimes in reaching a goal, you will have to become a slightly different person, because the person you were is the exact opposite of the person you need to be to actually reach that goal.
And that's not a bad thing.
Right. I mean, we change every day, right? Like,
not a bad thing. That's life.
We're just progressing. But Johnny, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how can they contact you?
Okay, you can find me. I'm basically on the Brooklyn Strong webpage or Facebook page. I'm also on Facebook as Johnny Pietrunti. I'm sure you'll put the spelling in your intro here. And that gray area is my blog, so you can find me there. But Facebook is cool. I was being combative about accepting people, but my general rule on accepting friends is just reach out to me and say hi and let me know who you are. Then we can go from there. I just don't like marketers in my feed spouting BS.
That's perfect. I recently maxed out my friends list. Who's laughing now? High school. But so I have to delete random people to add others, and I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna know. They're gonna know.
Well, most do. I've had people call me out because I got rid of 3,000 or 25% in the shot.
But it's whatever, man. But Johnny, thank you so much for joining us. Listeners, thank you for joining us. We love you guys. This is Mike signing out for the Stronger You Radio Podcast.
Stronger You Radio is a broadcast wellness production powered by StrongerUFit.com. Content copyright Stronger You. Executive producer Frank Sardella. Thanks for listening to Stronger You Radio. For more information on the podcast, visit StrongerUPodcast.com.